Good evening, Facebook, YouTube, Dailymotion, and Twitter. This is Rich again, back for your third and final video blog of the night for Wednesday, February 18th, 2015, at around 8:02 p.m. in Billerica, Massachusetts. Got a little bit of snow flurries in the area, but not going to amount to much. Maine is going to get several inches of snow because the whole state's under the winter storm warning. Some news to report. It's official. Amari Stoudemire has signed a contract with the Dallas Mavericks. Also, the Milwaukee Bucks bought out Larry Sanders' contract, and the MBTA has announced it will be getting up and running all of their subway lines by the end of next week, barring any major snowstorms or blizzards. And the NFL is unlikely to expand its playoff field to 14 teams in 2015 season, but that's eventually going to come sooner or later. And that's about it on that. My third and final video blog subject of the night is my personality profile. My personality profile tonight is about Mr. USA Tony Atlas, WWE Hall of Famer. Tony Atlas was one of the biggest professional wrestling stars in the 1970s and 80s. He wrestled for many regional territories. Mr. USA Tony Atlas was trained to become a professional wrestler by Larry Sharpe, and he made his wrestling debut in 1974. Before that, he was a bodybuilder. And Mr. USA Tony Atlas wrestled in several regional territories like Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling and Mid-South and Georgia Championship Wrestling. He won many regional titles, including the Mid-Atlantic Heavyweight Championship, and he also was Georgia Tag Team Champions many times, along with Tommy Wildfire Rich. He also teamed with Mr. Wrestling 2. But his biggest success, Tony Atlas' biggest success, was in the WWE. He made his WWE debut around 1980, and for the next 6 years, Tony was wrestling for the WWE on and off. He had feuds with Ken Patera over the Intercontinental Championship. He wrestled him at the Showdown at Shea in August of 1980. Mr. USA Tony Atlas also had a feud with Hulk Hogan. He was the first wrestler to press Hulk Hogan over his head, the press slam, and also he cleanly pinned Hulk Hogan at Madison Square Garden 1, 2, 3, even though Hogan's foot was on the rope, but it was a clean pin without interference. Also, Tony Atlas feuded with Jesse the Body Ventura as well. But Tony's biggest success in the WWE was forming a tag team with Rocky Johnson, who is Rocky Johnson's the father of The Rock. And Tony Atlas and Rocky Johnson were the first African American team to become WWE Tag Team Champions. They beat the Wild Samoans on an edition of Championship Wrestling in December of 1983. It was one of the most. It was a match where Captain Lou Albano, the Wild Samoans managers, was going to hit Rocky Johnson with the chair, but Rocky Johnson ducked and he hit the Samoans with the chair, and they pinned him 1, 2, 3, and Rocky Johnson and Tony Atlas become WWE Tag Team Champions. The fans were going wild there. Rocky Johnson and Tony Atlas had about a 6-month reign with the championships, but they dropped it to Adrian Adonis and Dick Murdoch. And afterwards, Rocky Johnson and Tony Atlas split up, there were plans for Tony Atlas to become WWE Intercontinental Champions somewhere in 1985. The plan was he was going to be Greg the Hammer Valentine for the Intercontinental Champion and get a feud with the Hammer, but that feud never happened because Tony was had substance abuse problems and stuff like that, and becoming unreliable. The last 2 years he was with the WWE, Tony became basically kind of a jobber to the stars, losing to a lot of wrestlers, including Harley Race, and he lost to Hercules Hernandez and other wrestlers. And by the fall of 1986, Mr. USA Tony Atlas was out of the WWE, and he resurfaced in World Class Championship Wrestling. He used a gimmick, the Black Superman, and he wrestled for World Class Championship Wrestling for about a year. He won the World Class Texas Tag Team Championship with like Skip Young. He also was a World Class TV champion, but like Tony Atlas wasn't, getting pushed big time, and the World Class Championship Wrestling was on the decline, so he left there around 1988. Then Tony Atlas went to Puerto Rico to wrestle for the WWC, and on July 16th, 1988, he was wrestling on that card where the infamous Bruiser Brody murder happened, when Invader #1 George Gonzalez stabbed Bruiser Brody many times, and Tony Atlas had to carry Bruiser Brody to like the ambulance, and Bruiser Brody passed away. And afterwards, like, Tony Atlas decided to leave Puerto Rico to avoid being testified and stuff like that. That incident had many major wrestling stars from the United States not wrestle in Puerto Rico anymore after that incident. It's a long story, which in a future blog that's going to be covered. And afterwards, like, Tony Atlas wrestled independence, and by the winter of 1988, Tony Atlas wrestled for International World Class Championship Wrestling out of New England. He turned heel, and he was formed the alliance with the Boston Bad Boy Tony Rumble. He became the IWC World Champion, beating Vic Steamboat. He had a long feud with Vic Steamboat. Vic Steamboat is the brother Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. But around this time, Tony Atlas didn't have a place to live. He was actually homeless. He was actually living in park benches and stuff, which is not good for a wrestler who was in the WWE at one time. And also there was rumors that Tony Atlas had a foot fetish and stuff like that, and he was having a lot of difficult times. In the summer of 1990, Tony briefly left International World Class Championship Wrestling to return to the WWE, but he used a gimmick, Saba Simba, a African warrior. The gimmick stunk. It stunk, but the announcers, especially Rowdy Piper and Gorilla Monsoon, knew Saba Simba was Tony Atlas. That gimmick didn't last too long, but like Tony Atlas credits Vince McMahon for helping him from get out of homeless to make some money again. And after Tony Atlas left the WWE, he returned to independence wrestling for International World Class Championship Wrestling again, and then he had briefly a cup of coffee with WCW in 1992, and then he bounced around again from independent to independent. He briefly resurfaced in 1997 in the WWE to help The Rock out a couple of times. There were rumors that he was going to form an alliance with The Rock, but that didn't come to be. And also Tony Atlas was profiled on MTV 1999 about my real life as a professional wrestler, showed him his ups and downs of Tony Atlas. He became a promoter. Eventually he moved to Maine and stuff like that. In 2006, Tony Atlas received the honor of becoming a WWE Hall of Famer, which was well deserved and stuff like that. 2008, Tony Atlas resurfaced in the WWE in the ECW Brown as a manager to Mark Henry and Abraham Washington and stuff. He was with the company for the WWE for about a year and a half, but eventually he got released. But Tony Atlas signed a Legends deal with the WWE. He appeared in Old School Raw a couple of times, and then Old School SmackDown. He was on Legends House and stuff like that for the WWE Network last year. And Mr. USA Tony Atlas is still around, and he's one of the greatest African American wrestlers of all time, in my humble opinion. But if he didn't have these demons, he probably could have been a major star, in my opinion. He probably could have been the first African American intercontinental title, and he could have maybe won a world championship with either WWE or WCW, because Tony Atlas was loaded with charisma and stuff like that, and he was very, very popular. He probably was a big time, like one of the most popular faces in the 70s and the 80s. Seeing his heel work like on International World Class Championship Wrestling, it was decent, but I couldn't buy Tony Atlas as a major heel in like WWE or WCW. It wouldn't have worked good for heel run in the major promotions. He was better off as a face, in my opinion. And that's about it on Mr. USA Tony Atlas. And that's about it for tonight. I'll be back later, Facebook friends, YouTube followers, Daily Motion, and Twitter. 3 more video blogs tomorrow. First video blog will be about the top 10 greatest Division I college basketball coaches of all time. And then the second video blog will be about my view on Diesel, Kevin Nash's 1-year WWE title reign from November 1994 to November 1995. The blog will be running on Diesel Power, and the third and final video blog on the night will be about Baseball Hall of Famer Frank Robinson. Good night, everybody. See you tomorrow.